while we're here discussing how awful our London mayor is and his policies, I thought we should talk about the London Tube Network, or the London Underground, however you know it and whatever you call it. London Underground and all the transport systems in London are extremely overpriced. Any of you who have lived in London or traveled around in other parts of Europe will know that our underground system and all the tube and train network costs more than double what it costs in most other cities. And guess what? This lying mayor, Sadiq Khan, said he was going to freeze all the fares, but they've been going up every year. And it's not like it's the world's best transport system, so everything is run like clockwork and there are no delays and there's no problems. And then you can justify saying, well, we charge the most amount of money on the planet because we're providing you the best service on the planet. To cut to the chase, I think I need to be very clear and specific about what we are talking about here. Public transport is not a luxury. This isn't about beautifying the stations, putting the latest gadgets and technologies, and making it appear beautiful. So we have many stations that look futuristic. They have millions of pounds spent on them to make them look like a piece of art. And they have all these amazing escalators and staircases and these amazing glass sliding doors. And in reality, what we need is a very good train and tube system that just works. I mean, if you go to any country in Europe, I mean, let's take Paris, for example. It's 2 hours from London. It's a kind of a sister city of London. It's one of the biggest cities and a major capital in the world. So the transport system, the metro in Paris, looks nothing like London. It's very basic, it's very simple, it's noisy, it's rattly and crackly, but it's cheap, it works, and it's on time, and it's simple. Simplicity creates longevity. But instead, Transport for London and the London Mayor is spending so much money on these things that could be really, really well done for a fraction of the cost. We don't need to have all these fancy double-decker buses, 6 of them turning up at the same time. In this time and age of technology, where every phone has a GPS that tells you the location, every aircraft is controlled and has been controlled for decades, surely you can put a GPS controller, and I think they do, have it on every bus and make sure that they are run in succession, and then that buses turn up every 10 or 15 minutes, rather than you wait for 10 minutes, then 5 buses turn up at the same time, and then there's nothing. And when you go around London, you can see them, the bus drivers racing each other, overtaking like a massive multi-ton double-decker bus, and you can see them racing each other and overtaking when one bus is about to pull out and indicating the one behind him wants to go ahead, and then he will accelerate and change lanes, and you just think, this is chaos. And in all honesty, if they really cared about the pollution, they would have less buses, because anyone who walks around London or sees the transport in London will see that there are far too many buses that are just driving around empty. They run on diesel, they run on hydrogen fuel, some of them, but mostly on diesel. And they are big, guzzling, big polluting engines. We don't need so many of them. They could have double-decker buses in peak times and single-decker buses off-peak, and they could be evenly distributed. When I go to Sweden and other countries in Europe, people know the bus is going to take 5 or 10 minutes, sometimes even half an hour to come. They get used to it, they plan accordingly. These days we have an app that tells us when the next bus is coming. So you can just go and wait at the bus stop 5 minutes before it comes. You don't have to be there and expect the bus to turn up instantly. This instant gratification that we expect in everything these days has a price. And that price right now is pollution and extortionate amounts of money that we're paying for public transport. And I'm making this video because no one seems to talk about the fact that we are paying for things we don't need. We have all these fancy tube stations like the one in Canary Wharf or London Bridge or Waterloo and Blackfriars. I mean, wherever you go, every station looks like it's ready for a spaceship to land in it. It's a necessity. It should be so cheap and it should be so efficient that people will stop driving their cars because they'll think, why should I pay for fuel and parking and go through all this traffic and hell when I can just jump on the tube? I will tell you my own story. I live in southwest London and I worked in Canary Wharf for about 15 years. Canary Wharf is about 10-15 miles from here. And it takes me an hour by car to get from my home to my office door to door. But if I take public transport, it takes me an hour and 10. That's not it. It costs more per month on a travel card than it costs me for fuel and parking to park in Canary Wharf. So for me, my car is depreciating at home anyway. I'm paying for the insurance and tax anyway. So people who say, oh, it's wear and tear on the car and all that, that's just bullshit excuse. If you have a car, it's depreciating whether you drive it or not. So for me, going to work by car was quicker, convenient, comfortable, my own space. I can listen to an audiobook, I can listen to music, I can do whatever I want. And it was about £10 a month cheaper. So where's the sense in that? Where's my incentive? And people will say, oh, you're just being selfish, you don't think about the environment. Well, if all of us stop driving, who drive, those who are on the public transport won't have any more space, because the public transport as it is today, the tube and the train system, I'm not talking about the buses, they cannot handle the volume of people going into central London. So if all of us stop driving, with the current state of the public transport, it will collapse. Even now, once in a while, if I ever took the train or the tube, there's nowhere to stand, there's nowhere to sit. You can forget about sitting in the morning or peak hours, but there's nowhere to even stand. Sometimes you'd have to wait for 2-3 trains to go by before you can get on it. And then the trains are delayed, the trains are cancelled last minute. It's a complete sham. And why on earth would I put myself through this every single day when I can just get in my car and go to work and it's cheaper? And I know the government doesn't give a shit about pollution. Really, if they want to reduce congestion, the simplest thing would be to ask these big companies to move their offices to the suburbs. Why do all the massive companies have these big buildings in central London where 1 million people from the suburbs and everywhere run like rats every morning to this center, sit behind their computers, type emails all day, have video conferences or a couple of meetings, and then go back? If they dotted these offices and building to other parts of London, people would happily, or not even just London, I mean other cities, people would happily go and live in the countryside close to a major building or an office or a business hub where they can go to work and not have to deal with the expensive life of central London. But these politicians cannot touch these large businesses and organizations because they're in their pockets and they're too scared. They can't do anything. So the CEOs of companies make the decisions. They all have egos. They want to look good. They don't want to be sitting in a little small unknown village in Essex, because how will they tell their golf buddy that their building is in the heart of London, in the city of London, or in Canary Wharf? So it's a bunch of egomaniacs running our world, and we are just suffering the consequences. Another one of those. Thanks for watching. Until the next one.